Welcome to the Starfish Diaries. I am your host, Liz McKean, and you might have found me from another podcast or from yoga or through coaching or maybe a recovery event, but all that matters is that you're here now, and I am so glad that you're here. On this show, we're going to be talking about identity and self-trust and recovering from all sorts of things, including shame and burnout and squeezing ourselves into what we think good looks like. And I'm going to use a lot of metaphors because that's how I make sense of the world. And I'm hoping that helps you too. I'm really just here to remind you and honestly remind us that there is no such thing as doing life wrong and that you do get to make your life into a place that you want to be. And we're going to figure it out together. So let's go. Hello, you wonderful human you. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. I'm happy to be here with you. I had to jump up and down several times before I hit record because I'm tired today. So if I have a tired voice, that's why. But that does not change the amount of enthusiasm I have for having this conversation with you. And the fact that you put me in your ears is just such an honor. I feel really lucky to be here. So before we get started, let's do a thing that will hopefully get us all a little more oxygen to the brain, and that is taking some deep breaths. So I think we're going to do 3. That's the vibe I'm feeling. I don't know how many of you who are listening are yogis, but I mean, really everybody's a yogi. If you've taken some deep breaths and gone inward and, are trying to connect with something inside yourself I would guess if you press play on this podcast, you probably are that person. That counts. That's yoga. So anyways, in yoga classes, traditionally, yoga teachers just love 3, just love doing 3 sets of things. So we're going to just go on that brand and do 3 deep breaths. So whenever you're ready, see if you can shake out a little bit of energy in your arms. Maybe you unclench your jaw and then take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Good. Feel your shoulders kind of soften as you exhale, and do that again. Big breath in through your nose. Maybe your eyes close. See if that exhale can be twice as long as the inhale. Maybe even pause at the bottom, empty for a moment. Yeah, this last one we're going to hold. So biggest breath you've got. Fill up everything. And hold at the top. Everything expands. Keep that breath in, but drop your shoulders. And then open your mouth and let it go. That's the stuff. Oxygenated all the way. So what I wanted to talk with you about today, if my throat will cooperate, is just the beautiful uniqueness that is you, that is me, that is every single gosh darn one of us. There's a saying that came to my mind when I was thinking about this episode, and it comes from 12-step rooms, of which I am not a part. I'm not a 12-stepper personally, and something I hear people say a lot who are in those rooms is, that we all think we're terminally unique, or we are terminally unique. Essentially, the message is that you're really actually not very unique. Like, people have done this before. There is a way to move through this. And, by thinking we are so unique and so special and just like nobody is experiencing this the way we are, it, creates a potentially catastrophic outcome because that makes us not open to the kind of support that would help us. For heaven's sake, help me, help you kind of vibes. And that is a sentiment that I understand where it's coming from. And, I know people who that has been incredibly helpful for. And for me, I find that incredibly unhelpful, and I disagree. And if you are already feeling big feelings about that, if I'm speaking in, contradiction to something that you believe in deeply, that's okay. It's okay if we disagree. And also, maybe stick around and listen, because maybe we do agree and we're just using different language. You never know. I find that we all experience everything incredibly uniquely, whether that's, addiction, whatever our version or definition of that is, or sleeping, what it feels like to move through the day, what it feels like to be in relationship with others, with yourself, what it feels like to be hungry, what it feels like to be full, what it feels like to be fulfilled. And I mean, again, this is all just words, but it's a unique experience for all of us. Gosh, I remember this moment. This just popped into my head when I was walking into school. It was elementary school. That's how long ago this was. Because I have a friend who's still a very close friend. She wore really thick glasses. She had really poor eyesight when we were growing up. I think she had LASIK, so it's not quite as bad now, but none of that matters because in the moment, this is in the 80s. Gosh, if it was elementary school. So those like really thick bottle cap kind of glasses, I think is what people would call them. And I remember her talking about what it was like to have her glasses on and glasses off because I was asking. And I remember having a moment where I was like, oh, I wish I could see like what you see. I wish I could see like what that tree looks like over there for you versus for me. It was just like fascinating to me because I was fortunate to have good eyes when I was younger. And it was like this moment in my little kid brain of like, oh my gosh, I can only see from my eyes. I'll never be able to see from her eyes. And that just felt kind of tragic for me in that moment, which is interesting to look back on because I don't know if I've thought about that moment maybe ever. And, I think about that a lot now because there's so many ways that I arrange my life to be delightful and to be comfortable and to feel safe. And I see all the really tangible ways that differs from what other people do to make their life feel comfortable, feel safe, feel delightful. And maybe those aren't even words that they're seeking out. And a lot of my work, my brand, so to speak, is about helping you feel better and about all of us having this inherent deserving to feel better. I deeply, deeply believe that you deserve to feel better. Honestly, I don't even really like the word deserve because that kind of implies that there's a version, there's a world in which you wouldn't deserve that. And I don't know. I think it's just inherent, but I'm going to use the word because language is limited. But I also am very aware that feeling better looks different for each individual person. And again, that could be applied to anything in the world that we're experiencing, going through. And it's one of those things that shouldn't be revolutionary, who shouldn't be like a whoa, aha moment. But for me, and I would be shocked if I'm alone in this, I'm pretty sure I'm not, it is revolutionary. Because throughout my life, I mean, especially as a woman, and I know this isn't an experience that is only in women, and certainly not in all women, but for me, and I am quite certain that this is a common experience in many women, we are taught that the needs that we have, the feelings that we have, the messages that our body is giving us should be always overridden by the shoulds coming from outside of ourselves. There's so much celebration of women who disregard their own needs and take care of everybody else. And, we learn to make that a need. We learn, and that is actually a need that I have. Who knows how much that is conditioned and how much of that is inherent to, who I am as a person and would be no matter what. But it becomes it's very rewarding to be needed and to be a helper. And that's something that I really love about myself. So that's not something that I'm trying to change. But I think about the times that was the only desire that I had that felt okay to seek out, satisfaction of or fulfillment within. Because everything else was, the way I received messages, considered, selfish, not deserving, not something I was allowed to want. And I am a person who is pretty uncomfortable a lot of the time unless I do something about that. And I feel like thanks one of the positive things about social media is that we've seen that in a lot of our discomforts that so many of us have held and hidden and self-medicated over our entire lifetimes, we've learned that there's actually a reason for it. There's like brain chemistry, there's hormones, there's all these things that there's actually solutions for. And that's super exciting because it allows us to ask, for help with something, because suddenly the solutions are available. Suddenly there's language for the thing that feels crappy. But even before there was language for that, I've always been someone who is pretty determined to figure out how to be okay no matter what. And for a long time, that was something I held a lot of shame around. I feel like that's a big origin story. Part of the origin story of addiction for me is that when my only goal was to appear okay on the outside so that I could get the needs met that were allowed to be met, I could do the things that I was supposed to do, be the person I was supposed to be, the okay, got it together, here to serve kind of person that I thought I was supposed to be. The needs that I had that were keeping me from being able to do that, the anxiety, the panic, the inability to sleep, the it's so interesting. I remember when I first was diagnosed, I'm going to go on some tangents today, so we're in it together, buckle up. When I first was diagnosed with ADHD, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. I sat in my desk like a good little girl on my entire school experience. I wasn't running around and jumping on desks and causing destruction like the little boys were. And the doctor who was diagnosing me, I remember, said like, well, women or girls typically would be more, that hyperactivity was usually hurt them instead of other people. So, little boys are often socialized to be outward with the hyperactivity, whereas little girls go inward. And that's, again, not the experience for every single person. And, gender is a construct, but it is a social construct. And we are swimming in those waters, for better and for worse. So she was like, is there any little movements that you struggle to control that hurt you? Did you pick, bite, tap? And I, as I'm having this conversation with her, look down at my fingers that were bleeding because I picked my cuticles without even thinking about it till they hurt. My fingers throb in the middle of the night because I pick. And I was like, oh, yeah, I do that. And, tapping and, I bite the inside of my cheek and I grind my teeth into smithereens and, all these little things that are, anxiety, ADHD, whatever the heck you want to call it. But I was like, oh yeah, there was pretty constant motion that I really couldn't control even when I tried. And yeah, it was hurting me. I'm pretty sure it probably bothered my mom too, but sorry, Mom, for being a little weirdo, picking her little cuticles until they bled. Tapping. I think I did other things too that were weird, like my jaw. And we're doing some kind of funny little movement with my shoulder that like just kind of felt weird. And so I just couldn't stop doing it. I think, yeah, I probably freaked out my parents so much. Anyway, so now that I've completely gone off track and lost my train of thought, ADHD, anxiety, etc. Yeah, all these things, all these uncomfortable things as I'm growing up that I would find ways to take care of so that I could hide them. And, that's one of the reasons that when I found alcohol and I was like, oh my God, I am cured, I feel better. It was just the ultimate, I need to make sure I have access to this or anything similar that makes me feel better forevermore. It doesn't matter what it does to me. I'll pick this cuticle till it bleeds, metaphorically, in any way that I need to in order to function, because the actual taking care of me things were not okay. So they had to be done, in the dark corners. And that showed up in so many ways. Gosh, I think about, it's just one like microcosm of how it just didn't occur to me. Didn't even occur to me. This wasn't a thing that I was like, okay, this is a message I'm receiving, so I'm going to behave accordingly. It was just, again, the water we were swimming in, not even knowing that we were in the water at all. I I didn't know that my life was for me. I didn't know that my body was for me. I remember distinctly being so just struck with admiration, and I think it was probably jealousy, even though I couldn't name that at the time, and a little bit of horror at people who would, dye their hair bright colors, wear clothes that someone might have a reaction to, get a tattoo, and then even when I thought about what if I did want to get a tattoo, because I always kind of wanted to get a tattoo, I was like, it would have to be the perfect thing, because if somebody asks me about it, I need to be able to justify it. I need to be able to say, this is so meaningful and this is why, and that way it'll be okay, because I have to have a permission slip for every single thing. And then when I hit, gosh, I guess it was probably around 40 or ish, and I started to challenge that belief that I had, and I did things like get tattoos. I started to wear clothes that I felt comfortable in, even though honestly I feel comfortable in mostly black and sometimes gray, and and I like to straighten my hair, and everyone in my life was always just very adamant that like I was lucky to have curly hair, so I should wear curly. Girls should wear color, so why aren't you wearing colorful clothes? And silly things like that like actually when I say it out loud, it's like, oh my God, Elizabeth, like, first of all, the most first world problems that we're talking about here in that specific scenario. But for me, it was such a big, it was just, again, like that kind of root cause. It was like origin story of so many issues, because gosh, if you're living your life and living in your body in a way that serves everyone but you, you're never going to be successful. I was never able to be successful. I mean, I guess externally there were a lot of ways that I was, quote unquote successful, but what is successful if you're miserable and addicted and scared and alone? And I would say that's not a kind of success that I just don't consider that success anymore. And it's impossible, because I mean, this is a common conversation in marketing, is that if you try to market to everyone, if you try to reach everyone, with your product or service or whatever, if you try to be for everyone, then you are for no one. Because we're all so freaking unique. You know what I mean? We know this. Everyone is so and so if you're trying to live in a way that is palatable to the whole wide world, anybody that comes across you, I mean, that's impossible. You're going to be offensive to someone. You're going to be annoying to someone. You're going to be ugly to someone. You're going to be too this, too that, not enough this, not enough that. And I came across that, and just like a little, what were those? Not ping pong. God, I just brought this up in the other podcast I'm on. I can't think of this machine. It's like the machine where the ball, like you slingshot it up into it's like a standing table, and it goes up and then it just bounces off different things. And you're kind of desperately trying to keep it from coming all the way back down into the hole. I'm sorry if you're listening to this and like shouting the name of this machine into this and the arcade machine that I'm trying to think of into the microphones is what I do when people can't think of words on podcasts, but it'll come to me at some inconvenient time. Anyway, I feel like that's what I was. I was constantly trying to like whack the ball back up so it wouldn't sink, but it was impossible. Inevitably, that ball comes back, and you just hope you racked up enough points to get another shot. So at this point in my life where I'm like, oh shit, like I actually can do whatever I want to, because I am a grown ass person, and I have tattoos, and I wear my hair the way I want to, and I wear my clothes, and I do my work the way I want to, and I decide, what my place is in this world. And I'm so grateful to, be surrounded by people who kind of saw through some of the trying so hard to be what I was supposed to be for years and years, and are still around and love me anyways, including my friend with the bottle cap eyeglasses. But the thing that's different is that I like me now. And I help myself feel better when I need to in the unique way that I decide that I want to feel better. And with that comes this freeing realization that you get to do that too. That was my favorite part about teaching yoga, was seeing, and I'm putting this in the past tense just because I'm not actively teaching group classes right now. I'm sure I will again in the future, but just at the moment I'm not. But when I would teach, my favorite people to teach would be people who thought they couldn't do yoga because they thought it was supposed to look a certain way. Their body was supposed to be able to do certain things, wear certain things, perform in a certain way. And when I would, steer them into the direction of like, nope, like you could just take a nap on this mat right now and that would be okay. Oh, you struggled to get, down onto the mat and then get back up again? Here's a chair. Honestly, fuck that mat. Let's get rid of it. If all you do is take a few deep breaths here, you did yoga. I'm so glad that you were here. And obviously there's ways to exist in, we'll just continue with yoga right now in a metaphorical yoga class, and also support the unique experience of every other person. I would certainly ask if someone was like, well, my way of doing yoga today is singing a song to myself and doing jumping jacks while someone else is trying to like sit quietly and take deep breaths and like find some peace within themselves. Be like, cool. I want you both to have a great experience. That might not be, compatible next to each other. So let's figure out a way to do this. Maybe we run 2 classes and one of them is the noisy one and one of them is the quiet one. And if we don't have that option, how can we figure out a way to respect everyone's experience? So I'm not trying to say, go out and, run through the streets doing things that are going to harm other people. No. But I am saying we all get to have our unique experiences. We all get to feel better in the way that we uniquely need and want to feel better. And also there can be seasons of that and that can change. So the way that I taught yoga was very much in that way of you get to have your own unique experience and let me help you find that because you might not know what that is, It might not occur to you to bend your knee in a different way here. It might not occur to you to pull a chair up, so I'm going to help you with those tools. But unless I told you that you're allowed to have your own unique experience, you might not know to ask. And then I wouldn't know to help you with that. So it's a very cool moment, I guess, to be in right now where I'm doing that with eyes much more wide open than they've ever been before. And my hope is that that message can get out that you get to have your own unique experience. You get to feel better in a way that feels right for you, but also, doesn't hurt you because, in my experience, when we found something that helps us feel better, but it takes more than it gives, usually that means that's not the thing that we want to ultimately use to feel better. Alcohol made me feel better, but it also destroyed my life, and would have eventually killed me. And, that's every individual's prerogative to do what they want to do. But, I read this recently that addiction, it shrinks where you can find joy. It just brings all your joy and into this one thing that you need to survive, and everything else goes away. And fulfillment expands it. I just keep smacking this microphone. Sorry to you and to my editor. And that was so interesting to me because I struggle sometimes with even the language around addiction, because, the way a lot of people talk about quote unquote addiction, I'm doing little quotes with my fingers here. It's like anything that you rely on. Anything, doesn't even have to be like a substance that changes your brain chemistry, anything you rely on that you feel like you can't live without is like you're addicted to it. But honestly, kind of fuck that, because there are medications that you take that you would like anti-anxiety medications that if you could take it as prescribed and you will go into withdrawal, you'll have a physical dependency on that. And it's helping you live a happier life, but that also allows you to expand where your joy comes from So for me, that doesn't count. And then, alcohol, again, like my entire world became very much blinders only on that. And I lost joy and delight and myself in that. So for me, that was just like not the right solution. So I think it's just a bigger conversation than like, don't rely on anything external, because I rely on a lot of things externally. And I'm so glad that there are so many options externally to help me feel better. And, I've talked about this before, and this is, the thing that I'm doing right now, but hypnosis is something that I find incredibly powerful in this way, because it's an invitation to connect with like this subconscious part of you, these parts of you that are below what we have typically access to at surface level. It allows us to connect with the part of our brain that can change the way our entire body functions. And in there are all those stories, right? There was, for me, the story that this body doesn't belong to you, this life doesn't belong to you. And, hypnosis would be the thing that would allow me to go down in there and change it. Because those are the kind of like deeply held beliefs that you can't just tell yourself or tell someone else, like, consider this other thing, consider this other, there's a deeper knowing that might not be true, but it feels like an absolute fact and an absolute knowing. And with hypnosis, we have access to those deeper knowings, and we have the opportunity to challenge them on a plane that can be effective. And because it is your deeper knowing that you're connecting with, you get to, it's going to be unique to you, by design. By design, it's going to be unique to you, because it's you you're connecting to. And even when you're doing it with another person, if you're with a person, a facilitator or a hypnotist that is, doing it in a way that is, I think, the most human and compassionate and actually based on connection, then they're going to help you just get closer to you. They're not going to tell you, to do something the way that you want to do it. And I think that's really cool and critical. And it's all, there's so many little tools you can use. I've learned so many, I mentioned this in the last episode, but so many ways to build roadblocks. Specifically for me, anxiety is my forever companion that I am dancing with in this life. And, there's a lot of triggers, both that I'm aware of and some that I don't even know where the heck they come from, that will create a really big anxiety reaction in my mind and in my body. And, I'm able to pull out this toolbox every single time that happens, so it doesn't just spiral me out of control. I can take a moment and try a few different things that connect with that inner layer, that under the hood kind of layer, to be like, let's pause and see if we can feel better right now in this moment. Because until I feel better in this moment where anxiety is kind of running the show, I'm not going to be able to do anything, like literally anything. It's if you are a person with anxiety and certainly with panic disorder, if you're someone who's had panic attacks, you know how unhelpful it is for someone to say to you, everything's fine. Calm down. There's nothing to worry about. Don't be anxious. It's like, it's comical. But when you have these little roadblocks that, that someone can teach you, and that also that you can do with yourself, then you actually can kind of say those things, kind of, maybe not like in those words, but, there can be an opportunity to challenge the thing that's happening in your body-brain circuit that actually could change the course of that river, of that waterfall. And I just think that's cool. And I heard another thing. I had a whole outline for what I was going to talk about, and it's just gone way off the rails, and that's just how my brain rolls. So thanks for rolling with me. There is this man on Instagram who I love following. I love his account. I think his name is Anthony. It's like Plantony or something. It's like Plant and his name that are the at. If I remember, I will put it in the show notes. But just because he's a fun follow. And he talks about how he's just hilarious, everything he's saying. Sorry, just like all of his funny things just came rushing back into my brain. But you don't need all this context for the story to make sense. So one of the things he said is, like if people are telling you how to take care of houseplants, and that's not working for you. Like if you have a plant and you're feeding it, all right, just so you know, I'm not good at keeping plants alive, so do not take this as advice. So little caveat. If you have a plant and you're feeding it ginger ale and that plant is thriving, and then you go online and you see somebody say, this is how to take care of this plant, do it just like this, but your plant is thriving, doing what you're doing, like, then cool, because they adjust. These are plants that only ever thrived outdoors, and we brought them in and we figured out ways, but they adapted, and each individual plant adapted. It's the same thing for dogs. I mean, God, there's no one way to take care of an animal that, wasn't originally meant to sleep on couches, but they do. And each one is so unique. So one person is going to be able to train their dog in one way, take care of them, make them feel safe in one way, and another is going to have an entirely different experience. And we are just like those plants. We are just like those dogs. And every experience we have, every cell that is in our body that has changed, what a bazillion cells like die and are born all the time. Once again, not a science podcast. But that all is, we're constantly refreshing our programming, and we're constantly creating new programming. And, whether it's food not affecting me the way it affects you, a medication, I mean, certainly alcohol affected me differently than it affects a lot of people. Certain hypnotherapy or any kind of therapy interventions, modalities are going to affect you different than other people. Like the way to navigate this, in my just one person humble opinion, it all starts with knowing, acknowledging, accepting, celebrating that you are incredibly unique. And honestly, sure, terminally unique. We're all terminal is, it's just the human condition, And so that doesn't mean that we can't learn from other people. That doesn't mean that we can't, find, whether it's a program or a solution or a way to feel better that works for other people, that maybe can work for us just in exactly the same way. Maybe it will. But it does mean that you get to decide. And that does mean that if something doesn't work for you, that worked for somebody else, or vice versa, that's because you're you. And I'm so glad that you're you. Gosh, sorry, one more little reflection, just because now all these little memories are coming back to me. I was reading about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which is, I think everybody's heard of it, and I think we all use it that language far too flippantly, because there's people that are really affected by this and suffer from this particular diagnosis, this brand of how anxiety shows up. And it can be, just debilitating. And so I'm not here to try to, if that's something that you suffer with, I'm not here to try to tell you that I have any kind of answers or solutions, except for the fact that you, again, deserve to feel better. But I saw somebody talking about it, and they, it had gotten a hold of a lot of the common content out there that says, your body, I haven't read this book, so I'm if you love this book, please know that I'm saying this only from what I've heard, not as a direct person who's experienced it. But they had talked about like your body keeps a score. They talked about just general messaging about following your intuition and believing your gut, things like that. So, in some ways similar to what I'm talking about now, and how you get to decide and you get to know you. And they were saying how that was really detrimental for them because what they were experiencing as their intuition and their gut and what their body was telling them was really the OCD. It was the obsessive thoughts. And so it was, catastrophic, and it was like convincing them that they were supposed to take on full responsibility for someone's diagnosis. Someone was very ill in their family, and they were like, if I do this ritual, it will make them better. That's my gut is telling me that, so I have to listen to it, and that wasn't the case. They learned later that actually those obsessions were hurting them, not helping them. And so even on like a meta level, like what we're talking about here, if you zoom out, if you're like, I don't know, what it is that I need, like your knowing is going to show up differently than somebody else's knowing. But how cool that they were able to find help, they were able to find support that helped them to understand that, like, even that for them was different, and it was okay that they weren't someone who was going to tune into their gut, tune into their intuition, because that was very jumbled up with this disorder that they have to find a new way to connect with what they need, and they were able to find that. And I think that's just actually more evidence that we're just all so incredibly different. And if something is taking from you, if it's shrinking your joy and your ability to do life in a way that is meaningful for you instead of expanding it, then even if, on paper, you're doing all the things right, it's still okay to question it. It's still okay to look at your life and say, all right, well, people keep telling me they're so jealous of this curly hair, but I just don't like it. It doesn't feel like me. Straighten your hair, which is what I did. Or go the opposite direction. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad about their hair right now. It's just my very personal experience. You get to show up how you want to show up, and I will die on that hill, metaphorically. And you do deserve to feel better. And there is a way to do that still allows you to be the kind and generous person of service that you are, if that is a thing that you love about yourself. I love that about you too. But, as they say, you got to take care of you in order to take care of everybody else. And I deeply believe that showing up in a way that allows you to feel comfortable and safe and supported and autonomous in ways that feel right for you and free is in itself an act of service, because it allows you to be the version of you that we need, because we need you, not you shoving yourself into a mold that doesn't fit. You that's really maybe you haven't even fully met yet. Well, that went a direction I wasn't expecting, but here we are. Thank you for sticking with me. This is a little longer than usual, wasn't it? My goodness. She had things to say today. All right, well, if you're still with me, I'm eternally grateful. We're going to take 3 deep breaths to finish up, because that's how we roll, and that's how we allow ourselves to move on with our day, right? So maybe give a little shake out your arms, shake out your head, unclench your jaw, and when you are ready, take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Long breath out through your mouth. Feel those shoulders start to melt, and do it again. Big breath in through your nose. See if you can double the time it takes to exhale. Maybe even pausing, empty. Yeah, one more. We're going to hold this one. Biggest breath you've taken all day. Big breath in. Yeah, feel your ribcage expand. Hold if you can. Maybe smile a little. And then open your mouth, let it go. Beautiful job. I adore you. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you are uniquely, perfectly you. Because exactly how you are is exactly how we need you. Okay, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Starfish Diaries. I want to take a quick moment to thank some of the people who have made this possible. The artwork that I am so in love with is by my friend and the most talented artist, Mo Houston, and you can find her and her work and work with her by going to Joy Scout Studios. I will have that linked in the show notes. And thank you to my incredible editor, Sean Gritters. If you are looking for production support with your podcast, highly recommend that you check him out. His information will also be in the description.